Today we're going to show you the exact tips in getting your finance approved from the banks,
including the exact credit score you need to give yourself the best chance of getting a loan approved.
All right, Nathan, let's dive right in. Hey guys, before we start today's video, if you like it, make sure you give us a thumbs up or subscribe below. Really appreciate it. All right, Nathan, so there's been articles recently that have said the decline rate of loans has been up to 40% this year. So the banks are being a bit harsher with the raw commission. They're asking a lot more questions. The credit criteria is getting a bit tougher. So what are some tips to getting your finance approved really quickly?
Well, the first tip we have for today is having your deposit together. I've seen it endless amount of times where you might be saving your deposit, but it's actually a mum or dad's account because you don't trust yourself. Well, the issue with that is the banks actually want to see your savings pattern. And when it's in another person's name, they don't count it as your savings history.
You also need to make sure you've held on to that savings for at least 3 months. So one thing that we also see is people moving money around, which is fine as long as it's between your accounts. The banks will also ask questions if you've got bigger transfers over $5,000. So just be careful of that. Make sure you're not moving it from my account to Nathan's account and back and forth, you're lending money, because they're gonna think, oh, has Nathan just given that as a gift? What's the go? And that can actually affect your chances of getting your loan approved and getting finance from the banks.
Tip number 2 is check your spending habits. So once again, if you're getting Uber Eats, if you're going to this TAB to put some bets on during the weekend, these are all things that the banks are looking at nowadays. So Jaden, what are some things that I can do to ensure that I have the highest chance of success?
Yeah, so like Nathan said, the banks are literally looking through your last 3 to 4 months day-to-day transaction account statements. And not just your transaction accounts, they're looking through your credit cards, your personal loans, and all your history. So if you're spending too much on gambling, which we're seeing a bit at the moment, even if you have the odd punt on the weekend, they'll put that into your living expenses. And the higher your living expenses, it means the lower the amount of money that the banks are potentially gonna lend you. So make sure you clean up your act, have everything in together, and like Nathan said, you need to have at least 3 to 4 months of good history of not spending too much, particularly on gambling. We've got a whole other video on that though, you can check it out. We'll leave it in the comments below. Actually, so one bonus tip on that section is just make sure your accounts are up to date. So we see this all the time where you might have not had quite enough money in your day-to-day transaction account and your account can dishonor or overdraw. Again, the banks don't like this. They're saying, well, why are we gonna give you $500,000 if you can't keep just your day-to-day transaction account in honor? I saw one yesterday actually where their NIB insurance had come out, they forgot to put enough money in their day-to-day transaction account, and even though they had a bunch of savings in an attached account, the bank would just say no. So you just need to be really careful of that and make sure you have everything super clean so your loan will sail straight through.
Tip number 3, check yourself.
Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
Just answer the damn questions. Who are you?
I have told you.
So Jaden, what am I gonna check at this point in time?
Yeah, so one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is their credit score. You can actually get your credit report for free from...
So you can jump on Equifax. If you Google my credit score, you can jump online. There's a company called Equifax. You get 1 free credit report each year. Now the banks do look at your credit history and particularly your credit score. That gives them a good insight as to what you are as an applicant. If your score is under 650, it does become more and more challenging to get your loan approved. So check your credit score. Things to be careful of with your credit are limit the amount of applications you're doing. The more applications for credit cards, Zip Money, Wallet Wizard, all those companies will drag down your credit file. So reduce the amount of inquiries you're doing to give yourself the best chance of getting your loan approved.
The other thing that has changed in the last 12 months actually is there's positive credit reporting now. So what that means is the banks can see if you've been making your payments on your credit cards, personal loans, any other debt that you might have in Australia. The banks can see that now on your credit file. So if you missed a few repayments last month or the month before, even if the bank's not seeing that statement, they're gonna see it on your credit file. So just make sure, again, that's super clean, you've got everything up to date, because you really wanna put your best foot forward and increase your chances of getting your loan approved.
Tip number 4 to getting your finance approved is don't change your job. Now Jaden, this sounds like a no-brainer, but we see this all the time. Particularly changing industries is a no-no. So if you're in a position at the moment and you're getting a promotion to a new company, remember, if you're going for finance, some banks will want to see a bit more of a history. Generally, in a full-time role, anywhere from 1 to 2 pay slips to 3 months, depending on the bank. So remember, if you are planning on switching jobs, try and have a bit of foresight and plan ahead before actually making the move.
Yeah, Naz, I was helping out Joel yesterday, actually, who we were doing his pre-approval. He'd been in his job for the last 2 years, all was sweet, but he told me he was on the cusp of getting a new job and he wasn't sure if it was gonna happen the next 2 to 3 weeks. Now, that's fine, like Nathan said, you can have a pay slip, but if we're getting a pre-approval today when you're in your old job, then the pre-approval gets approved, and then when you go and find your property in 2 months' time, you've got your new job, some banks will just say no flat out because they won't allow you to be on probation, they'll want at least 6 months in the job, etc. There's other banks, like Nathan said, that don't need that as their criteria. So it's just important about being aware of this up front because it can really derail your chances of getting finance.
Tip number 5 in getting your finance approved is make sure the bank is okay with the property you're looking at. Now, Jen, what are some properties that I might have trouble with getting finance approved on?
Yeah, so anything that's under 40 square meters, so think of a unit usually. If it's a studio, so if it doesn't have its own kitchen or bedroom separate from the bathroom, big no-no. Certain postcodes, so if you're in inner city and sometimes outside of the city, there's certain areas that banks don't like lending to lower deposit people.
Large properties, so if you're over a certain amount of hectares, the banks can have issues with this. So there's a number of criteria that the banks have for particular properties that they're going to accept. Remember, chat with your mortgage broker, check out if you do find a property you like, if it is an acceptable one.
All right, now bonus tip for today is don't do too many applications. It can really affect your credit score. Or if you get knocked back by a bank, just be careful because they talk to each other. Nathan, why is this important to getting your finance sorted?
So once again, we talked about it before, it's all about reducing chances of declining. The more applications you do, the more it impacts your credit assessment. The other thing that the banks also do is talk to each other. So if you've been knocked back by one bank and you go to another bank, the banks will obviously find out what the reasons were why you got knocked back from the first lender. So remember, be careful with the amount of applications you're doing. Certainly not a good idea to do a pre-approval with bank A, B, and C and see which one comes back to you the quickest or gives you the best terms or rates or whatever it happens to be. Pick one lender and stick with them because the more applications you do, the less chances you're going to have of getting your finance approved.
So that's it for today, guys. If you liked the video, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you've got any questions, hit us up at huntergalloway.com.au.